My son told me I didn't deserve a Christmas gift. He said it with a smirk on his face, right after I handed him the keys to a brand new BMW. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, my wife told me to teach you a lesson. No gifts for you." And the worst part, his wife sat beside him smiling, actually smiling, as if humiliating me in my own home was some kind of holiday entertainment. I'm glad you're here, because after carrying this story inside me for years, I think I'm finally ready to tell the truth about what happened next. The moment when everything turned, the moment when my son opened an envelope from me and his hand started shaking so badly he couldn't even hold it upright. Before I begin, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if stories like this stay with you, please like and subscribe. It really helps me continue sharing the truths I've carried for years. All right, let me take you back. Back to the weeks before that awful Christmas. Back to the house where everything looked warm and magical on the outside. But inside my heart, something had already started to crack. My name is Linda, and I've lived in Ohio all my life. Same little neighborhood, same creaky front porch, same neighbors who wave even when they don't stop to talk. My house is not the biggest, not the prettiest, not the fanciest, but it's mine, and it's carried 35 years of memories inside its walls. Birthdays, scraped knees, school projects, burned dinners, rushed mornings, late night talks, raising my son, Jason, completely on my own. Jason was a Christmas baby, born December 20th, so maybe that's why Christmas has always meant more to me than any other time of year. It wasn't just a holiday, it was a reminder of the night I became a mother. And being Jason's mother was the greatest purpose my life ever had. Even now, even after everything, saying that out loud still hurts. When Jason was little, he used to stand on a chair beside me while I baked gingerbread cookies. He'd steal the candy decorations and pretend he wasn't. He'd hide under the tree and jump out when I plugged in the lights, shouting boo, even though it never surprised me. We'd watch Home Alone while he repeated every line Kevin said, and I'd pretend not to notice when he fell asleep halfway through. Our Christmases were messy and cheap and perfect. But kids grow up, and sometimes, without noticing it, they grow away from you. The shift began years before that Christmas. Not suddenly, not dramatically, more like one drop at a time, slowly filling a bucket I never realized was overflowing. When Jason went to college, he still called me every day. When he graduated, the calls became every couple of days. When he moved to Chicago for his finance job, they became once a week. And after he met Emily, well, eventually the phone barely rang at all. I didn't blame him. At least, that's what I told myself. Emily was polished, beautiful, immaculate, with a kind of confidence that made you straighten your posture without meaning to. The first time I met her at Thanksgiving, she hugged me politely but kept one arm stiff, like a person who hugs out of obligation. She complimented my cozy little home, and though her voice was sweet, she said cozy the way a real estate agent describes a house that's too small to be charming. Still, she made my son happy, or he believed she did, and I loved him enough to swallow anything that tasted bitter, as long as it meant he was smiling. Their wedding was the first time I realized how large her world was compared to mine. Her parents hosted it on a vineyard. The bridesmaids wore dresses that cost more than my entire monthly pension. I wore a simple navy gown I bought on clearance and spent the whole evening praying the zipper wouldn't betray me. I didn't fit in, but I clapped and smiled and fussed over Emily like I'd known her my whole life. Jason looked so proud, so grown, so far from the boy who used to steal gumdrops from the cookie tray. When Emily's mother told me, "We'll make sure Jason is comfortable now. He won't have to worry about finances anymore," I felt the floor shift under my feet. But I smiled, because that's what mothers do. After they married, the distance grew faster. The calls became shorter. The visits became rare. And when their daughter, little Lily, was born, I wasn't invited to the hospital. Not because I wasn't wanted, but because, according to Jason, Emily thinks it'll be less stressful if it's just us and her mom at first. Her mom. Funny how those words linger. Longer than they should. I sent gifts. I knitted tiny socks. I mailed storybooks I used to read to Jason when he was Lily's age. I told myself that love always comes back eventually, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just gets lost. Fast forward to the December of that year, the year of the BMW Christmas. I had been saving money for a long time. Not for me, for Jason, for Lily, for whatever future they were building. Every spare dollar I had, I tucked away. And one afternoon, while watching a shiny blue BMW glide into a parking space at the grocery store, I remembered how teenage Jason used to point at cars like that and say, "Someday, Mom, I'm gonna get you one of those." He never did, and I never expected him to. But I could get him one, and I suddenly became obsessed with the idea. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was nostalgic. Maybe it was the last desperate attempt of a mother trying to glue back the pieces of something fragile and fading. But once the idea hit, I couldn't shake it. I started visiting dealerships, test driving cars, sitting in glossy leather seats and imagining Jason behind the wheel. When I finally signed the papers, my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from happiness, from excitement, from hope. I pictured the moment he'd see it. His stunned face, Emily's surprise softening into something warm, maybe even a genuine thank you. I pictured Christmas being the bridge that closed the distance between us. I pictured laughter, family, warmth, the kind of holiday that stitched together all the frayed threads. I had no idea that the thread would snap instead. A week before Christmas, I called Jason. "I'd love for you three to spend Christmas with me this year," I said, trying to sound casual, not pleading. "I'll cook, decorate, everything. Lily can see where her dad grew up." He hesitated, and that hesitation pierced deeper than any word. I heard muffled whispering, Emily's voice in the background. Finally he said, "Yeah, we can come, but just for a couple days. Emily doesn't love being away from the city." I swallowed that little sting too. "Of course, honey. I'm just happy you're coming." When he hung up, I stood in my kitchen and cried into my dish towel. Not from sadness, from hope. Because for the first time in years, I thought maybe, just maybe, we were coming back together. I decorated the house like it was a holiday movie set. Lights on every window, garland across every doorway, fresh pine candles lit in every room. I even baked gingerbread cookies, the same recipe Jason used to help me with, which made the whole house smell like old memories. And tucked safely in the garage, covered with a red bow the size of a beach towel, was the BMW. My heart felt full every time I looked at it. I should have noticed the warning signs earlier. The short text replies, the lack of excitement, the tone in Jason's voice when he said Emily wanted things to be different this year. But I pushed all those hints aside. Mothers are good at ignoring shadows when they want the sun. The morning they arrived, I opened the door with the biggest smile I'd had in years. Lily toddled inside, adorable in her little red coat. Jason scooped her up, kissed my cheek, and said, "Hey, Mom." Emily walked past me with a polite smile, a stiff hug, and a quick glance around my house like she was checking to see if something had changed since last time. I told myself to let it go. It was Christmas. We were together. That was enough. Or so I believed. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that they hadn't come for a warm family holiday. They came with an agenda, a lesson, a plan I wasn't supposed to know about, a plan to put me in my place. And the moment Jason revealed that plan, the moment he smiked and delivered the cruelest line I've ever heard from my own child, that was the moment something in me finally broke. But that moment comes later. For now, just know this. Christmas had always been the day I celebrated becoming a mother. But that year, it became the day I realized I had raised a stranger. And I had no idea the humiliation that waited for me. Christmas Eve morning in Ohio has a feeling you don't forget. The air is sharp enough to wake you. The sky looks like it's holding its breath. And the world goes quiet in a way that feels peaceful, not empty. That morning, I woke up before the sun because my heart wouldn't let me sleep any longer. Jason and his family were finally here. My house, silent for most of the year, now had the soft hum of footsteps upstairs, the creak of the guest bed, the tiny squeaks of Lily's toys I'd left scattered in her room. It was the first time in a long time that my home felt lived in. I slipped into my slippers, wrapped myself in my old red fleece robe, and padded into the kitchen. The tile was cold under my feet, but the coffee pot clicked on with that familiar mechanical sigh. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the smell of cinnamon candles and pine. It almost felt like the old days, before Chicago, before the vineyard wedding, before Emily's polished life swallowed my son whole. For a few minutes, I let myself enjoy the fantasy. Coffee brewing, family upstairs, Christmas magic humming through the walls. I closed my eyes and savored the sound of Lily's babbling drifting faintly from the guest room. That little girl didn't know anything about family tensions or cold politeness, or the way adults can hurt each other without saying a single cruel word. All she knew was love, warmth, comfort, and I wanted to be part of her world, more than anything. I poured my coffee into a mug Jason painted in second grade, lopsided blue stars and the words #1 mom smeared across the side. I kept that mug for decades, cracks and all. I held it between my hands, letting the warmth sink into my fingers. For a moment, I let myself pretend we were still those people. Jason, the little boy who sprinkled cookie sugar everywhere, and me, the tired but grateful mom who would stay up until 2 a.m. assembling Christmas presents with missing instruction pages. But pretend only lasts so long. The upstairs floor creaked, and footfalls made their way toward the stairs. I heard Emily's voice, soft, controlled, almost rehearsed. "Jason, can you get her bottle from the bag?" "No, not that one. The other one." "No, that's the wrong formula. Jason, please." Her tone wasn't angry. It was just clipped, like a teacher correcting a student. Jason mumbled something back, too low to understand. I breathed in, let the fantasy fade, and told myself to be patient. Holidays are stressful. Travel is stressful. Being in someone else's home is stressful. I repeated these thoughts like a script, trying to soften the anxiety tightening under my ribs. When they came downstairs, I greeted them with a smile that felt a little too big. "Good morning," I said brightly. "Coffee's fresh. I've got muffins in the oven. Blueberry, your favorite, Jason." He nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Thanks, Mom." Emily gave a polite smile, the same kind you'd give a cashier handing you a receipt. "Morning, Linda," she said. "Do you have any oat milk?" "I'm not great with regular dairy anymore." I did not have oat milk. The closest thing was a carton of 2% milk that expired in a week. But instead of saying that, I grabbed my coat. "I'll run out and get some. It'll just take 10 minutes. Emily blinked in surprise. "Oh, no, you don't have to." But I was already putting on my shoes. Jason didn't say anything. Didn't say, "Mom, it's okay. We'll drink regular milk." Didn't say, "Sit down. You're hosting." Didn't say anything at all. I drove through the frostbitten morning, picked up her oat milk, and reminded myself that being a good hostess meant being accommodating, especially if I wanted to rebuild what had been slipping for years. When I came back, Emily thanked me, kindly, genuinely, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe she really was trying. Maybe we all were. The day moved quietly, slow, almost peaceful. We decorated cookies together. Well, I decorated cookies, and Lily covered herself in flour. Jason sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. Emily stood nearby directing Lily's little hands, trying to keep her clean, failing miserably, and letting out the kind of laugh that sounded like she wasn't used to laughing freely. I tried not to stare, but something softened in me watching her with Lily. She was different around her daughter. More natural, less guarded. Maybe I was wrong about her. Or maybe she was wrong about me. Maybe we were both just trying not to step on each other's worlds. After cookies, we moved to the living room. Christmas music played softly. Bing Crosby, the classic songs Jason used to roll his eyes at. I lit a fire in the fireplace and set out hot chocolate with marshmallows. Lily toddled from lap to lap, holding a tiny stuffed reindeer I bought her. Jason took her for a few minutes, bouncing her gently as she giggled. He looked young again, happy, a version of him I'd missed more than I realized. "Dad's got you," he whispered to her, kissing her head. Something warm pressed into my chest. I could have cried. That's how fragile I felt, how deeply I wanted this moment to last. Jason, I said quietly, you're such a good father. He didn't look at me, but I saw his mouth twitch just a little. Maybe pride, maybe discomfort, maybe both. Emily sat on the other end of the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I wondered, not for the first time, whether I'd ever get a real conversation out of her. I decided to try. So, Emily, I said gently, how's work going? Are you still with that marketing agency? The one you mentioned at Thanksgiving? She didn't look up. I am. Yeah, it's fine. Any big projects you're excited about? Not really. Oh, well. Jason cut in. Mom, Emily's tired. It was a long drive. The words weren't rude, but the tone was firm, like a gate shutting. Emily finally looked over, giving me a tight smile. Yeah, sorry. I've just had a lot on my mind. It's all right, I said softly, the smile returning to my own lips out of habit more than sincerity. I understand. But inside, my heart dipped a little lower. It wasn't rejection, not directly. It was something quieter, a subtle distancing, a polite wall I wasn't supposed to climb. Jason didn't notice, or maybe he did. He just didn't care to address it. Dinner preparations filled the afternoon. I cooked like I was feeding an army: glazed ham, mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole, 2 kinds of stuffing, roasted vegetables, rolls, homemade cranberry sauce, and a pecan pie cooling on the counter. It was too much food, honestly. But that's what mothers do when their hearts feel too big. They overprepare, overcook, overgive. Emily came into the kitchen once. Do you need help? She asked. Her tone was smooth, polite. Her eyes didn't match the offer. Oh, sweetheart, it's okay. I've got it, I said. She nodded, relieved, and floated back out. I didn't take it personally. Some people aren't kitchen people. Some people aren't helping people. Some people feel awkward in other people's homes. I told myself dozens of explanations because it was easier than thinking the one painful thought. She doesn't want to be here. But Jason did. At least I hoped he did. Dinner itself was wonderful, on the surface. The food was good, the fire was warm, Lily babbled happily, and for a moment I felt almost like a woman in a Hallmark movie. Except for one thing, Jason and Emily kept exchanging glances I couldn't interpret. Quick, subtle looks, a twitch of a smile, a shared breath, and once, when they thought I was turned away, I saw Emily lean close to him and whisper something. Jason snorted quietly, trying not to laugh. It was a small thing, but it pierced like a needle, a warning sign, the kind you recognize only in hindsight. After dinner, we all moved to the living room for presents. Jason bounced Lily on his knee while Emily scrolled her phone again. I sat in my favorite rocking chair, the one Jason used to climb into with me after nightmares, and I realized, sitting there, that I hadn't gotten a single present for myself under the tree. Not one. Not even a small wrap token. But I didn't mind. I didn't care. This Christmas was about giving, not receiving. And oh, did I have something to give. The BMW keys were in my pocket, wrapped in a tiny velvet pouch. The car itself was parked in the garage with a giant red bow I ordered from a specialty shop. I'd planned the reveal carefully. I would hand Jason the pouch, watch curiosity bloom in his eyes, and then guide him outside to see the biggest gift I'd ever given anyone. Just thinking about the moment made my heart race. For weeks I'd imagined the joy on his face, the gratitude, the hug, the moment I finally felt like his mother again, fully, deeply, undeniably. But before I could reach for the pouch, Emily said quietly, Jason, now. Jason nodded, smirked, and looked at me in a way I didn't recognize, sharp, almost entertained. And in that instant, before he opened his mouth, before he delivered the cruelest line I'd ever heard, I felt something drop inside me. A warning, a cold, thin thread pulling tight. Something was coming, something I couldn't name, and it was already too late to stop it. Jason's smirk was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the smirk of a grown man teasing his mother. It wasn't playful. It wasn't loving. It wasn't anything I recognized. It was the kind of smite people give when they are holding a secret you're not supposed to like. He leaned back on the couch, still bouncing Lily on his knee, and said, almost casually, almost like it was supposed to be funny, "Mom, Emily told me to teach you a lesson. So, no gifts for you this year." I froze, not dramatically, not visibly, just internally, like my heart stopped for half a second before thudding back to life too hard. I heard the crackle of the fireplace. I heard the faint jingle of the Christmas song playing in the background. I heard Lily giggle as she grabbed Jason's nose. But what I felt was something else. A shift, a coldness, a line being crossed, quietly but unmistakably. I blinked, forcing a smile. A lesson. Emily looked up from her phone at that exact moment, her lips curling into a small, proud smile. Not kind, not amused, proud. "Yes," she said softly. "A lesson. For boundaries." Boundaries. The word dropped like a stone into the room. A word that could mean anything. A word that polite people hide behind when they don't want to name the real issue. Boundaries. I repeated, trying to laugh lightly. What boundaries did I cross? Neither of them answered right away. Jason looked at Emily. Emily looked at Jason. A silent conversation flickered between them. Finally, Jason said, "It's not a big deal, Mom. Just, Emily thinks sometimes you overstep." Overstep. The second stone dropping. I overstep. I asked gently. Emily shrugged, deliberately casual, deliberately minimizing, the kind of shrug people use when they want to act innocent while delivering something sharp. "It's nothing to get upset about," she said. "We just want to make sure you respect our space, our decisions, our independence." Independence. Another stone. A pile forming. Space. Decisions. Independence. Boundaries. Lesson. None of these words belonged in a cozy living room with a fireplace crackling and a toddler giggling on her father's lap. None of these words belonged in a conversation between a mother and son on Christmas Eve. None of these words belonged between people who supposedly loved each other. But there they were. Heavy, sharp-edged, delivered with polished gentleness that somehow cut deeper than outright anger. I swallowed. "I'm sorry if I've made either of you uncomfortable. Truly. But Jason, darling, why would that mean no gifts for me?" Jason rubbed the back of his neck, looking uncomfortable for the first time. "Because, Mom, consequences matter." Consequences. A word that belonged in a courtroom, not from my son's mouth on Christmas. Before I could answer, Emily chimed in, her tone too sweet, too measured. "We just thought it would be good for you to reflect." Reflect. Lesson. Consequences. Boundaries. Finally, the shape of the plan emerged. They didn't come here for Christmas. They didn't come for togetherness. They came to deliver a message, a punishment, a quiet, polite, socially acceptable punishment for sins I didn't understand. And the worst part, they delivered it with the confidence of people who knew they were right. The room didn't explode into shouting. There was no dramatic confrontation. Nothing fiery or loud. This wasn't that kind of story. Instead, it was the quiet ache, the humiliating stillness, the realization that your own child believes you deserve to be corrected, handled, managed. Jason picked at a loose thread on his sweater. Emily smoothed her hair. Lily babbled, unaware of the tension spiraling around her. I sat there in my rocking chair, feeling the warmth of the fire on one side and the coldness of their words on the other. "I see," I said softly, because what else could I say? Emily crossed her legs, looking satisfied. Jason exhaled, like something unpleasant had been completed. I forced a small smile. "Well, thank you for letting me know. I appreciate honesty." "I didn't. Not this version of it. Not the kind handed to you like a wrapped box filled with thorns." Jason brightened immediately, as if my acceptance validated their choice. "Good. Then we're all good." But we weren't, and the heaviness in my chest told me we might never be again. Still, the night went on, because mothers learn how to keep going even when their hearts feel crushed, especially on holidays. I excused myself to the kitchen to check the pie, even though the pie had been cooling for hours. I just needed to breathe, to stand in a room without the weight of their judgment pressing against my ribs. I gripped the edge of the counter, feeling the textured ridges under my palms, trying not to cry, trying not to shatter. The BMW keys were still in my pocket, warm from my body heat. The little velvet pouch felt heavier now, not with metal, but with meaning. A gift given in love, now tangled with shame. I closed my eyes and whispered, "What did I do wrong?" I tried to think back on anything that might justify what they'd just done. Had I called too often? Asked too many questions? Sent too many gifts for Lily? Offered too much help? Been too involved? Too eager? Too mother-like? Was loving too much now considered overstepping? The more I tried to understand, the more the room seemed to spin. I wiped my eyes quickly before going back into the living room. Jason was flipping channels. Emily was scrolling her phone again. Neither looked up. I sat down slowly, pretending comfort, pretending calm, pretending I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. The fire crackled. The clock ticked. And the distance between Jason and me, once so small it felt like we shared a heartbeat, had become an ocean. Much later, when Lily was asleep and Emily said she was going to bed early, Jason lingered behind for a moment. He stood near the tree, hands in his pockets, looking oddly conflicted. "Mom," he said quietly, "please don't take what Emily said the wrong way." "How should I take it?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He hesitated. "She just wants us to have a different kind of relationship with you. Healthier, more structured." "Structured?" I repeated. Jason shrugged. "She grew up in a different environment. Her family is very clear about expectations. And you agree with them?" He didn't answer. Instead, he sighed, kissed my cheek, and said, "Merry Christmas Eve, Mom. Let's just try to enjoy tomorrow, okay?" Then he went upstairs, leaving me alone with the flickering lights of the tree. I stared at the ornaments, hand-painted ones Jason made in kindergarten, crocheted snowflakes my own mother stitched before she passed, the crystal star I splurged on during my first year as a nurse. Objects that used to bring joy now shimmered with an ache I couldn't name. A lesson, a consequence, a punishment, given to me by the one person I lived my entire life for. I sat there long after the fire died down, long after the house went quiet, long after the warmth faded, trying to understand the new reality I'd walked into, trying to accept something I had never prepared for. My son wasn't just distant anymore. He wasn't just busy, or stressed, or overwhelmed. He believed, truly believed, that I needed to be corrected, disciplined, humbled, by his wife, and by him. And that realization, that quiet, devastating realization, was the first true crack in my heart. A crack that would soon widen into something much bigger. Because the next day, the real Christmas day, would bring the moment that shattered everything. The moment Jason mocked me in front of my own tree. The moment Emily smiled while he did it. The moment I pulled out an envelope and changed the course of our lives forever. But before any of that happened, before the car keys, before the humiliation, before the shaking hands, there was this night. This quiet, heavy night. The night I realized I no longer understood my son. And the night I decided, without knowing it, that tomorrow I would finally learn the truth. Christmas morning should feel magical. Even when you're grown, even when life is complicated, there's usually a flicker of that childhood excitement, warm lights, soft music, the smell of cinnamon and pine. But that morning, the magic felt thin, fragile, like if I moved too quickly, the whole illusion would collapse. I woke up before anyone else. The house was cold, quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort you. It follows you like a shadow, reminding you that something is wrong even if you can't name it yet. I wrapped myself in my robe and walked downstairs. The lights on the Christmas tree were still glowing softly. Jason must have forgotten to turn them off last night, and the reflection of the ornaments shimmered faintly on the living room walls. For a moment, I stood there and stared at the tree, remembering years that felt warmer. Years when Jason would run downstairs, still half asleep, hair sticking up, holding his blanket in one hand. Years when he'd yell, "Merry Christmas, Mom," and tackle me with a hug before touching a single present. I stood there remembering a different version of us. A softer version. A version that didn't seem to exist anymore. Behind me, on the kitchen counter, sat the small velvet pouch with the BMW keys inside. I had taken them out of my pocket before bed because, in truth, they were starting to feel too heavy to carry. I stayed at that pouch for a long time. Long enough to feel the thrill fading out of me like a slow leak. Long enough to wonder if giving that car was a mistake. Long enough to realize that I was terrified of the moment Jason opened it. But I pushed those thoughts away. It was Christmas. I wanted to believe we could still have a good day. Jason came downstairs around 8. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept well. "Morning, Mom," he said, rubbing his eyes. I smiled. "Merry Christmas, honey." He kissed my cheek. But even that small gesture, once so automatic, felt hesitant. Like he was doing it because he knew he should, not because he wanted to. Emily followed 10 minutes later, dressed in a soft beige sweater and perfectly applied makeup, as if cameras were waiting somewhere. She gave me a polite "Merry Christmas, Linda," and walked straight to the coffee maker. I offered her the oat milk, and she nodded, turning back to her phone. Always the phone. Always scrolling, tapping, checking. I used to think it was just distraction. Now I realized it was distance. Lily came toddling down after them, Jason carrying her carefully, as if she were fragile glass. Her hair was sticking up in every direction, and her little pajamas were covered in tiny snowflakes. She reached out for me with a sleepy smile, and I felt something inside me soften, even as everything else felt tight. I took her into my arms. She smelled like baby shampoo and lavender lotion. I held her longer than necessary. Held her like she was the last anchor in my life, and Jason didn't say a word. We gathered around the tree. Emily sat on the couch with her legs crossed, scrolling again. Jason sat beside her, bouncing Lily lightly on his knee. I sat in my rocking chair. Same positions as the night before, but the atmosphere was different, thicker, heavier, waiting. I handed Lily her presents first. She tore the wrapping paper with the enthusiasm only toddlers possess. She laughed and squealed and clapped. Her joy was pure, untouched by adult tension. For those few minutes, the house felt warm again. But then I noticed something. Jason wasn't smiling. Not really. He was watching Emily, waiting, like she was the judge in the room, and he needed her approval before reacting. Every time Lily opened something, he glanced over at Emily, just a quick side-eyed check-in, but enough to freeze my breath each time. A small discovery, but a real one. My son didn't make emotional decisions anymore. He made approved ones, and that realization slid into my chest like a dull knife. When the gifts for Lily were done, I handed Emily her present, a designer purse I had saved for months to afford. I'd wrapped it beautifully, with a shimmering gold ribbon I thought she might appreciate. She opened it delicately, like she didn't want to ruin her manicure. Her eyes widened just a little. "Oh," she said. "Wow, Linda, this is very generous." But her tone was odd. Surprised, yes, but also tight, uneasy, as if generosity from me was unexpected, or uncomfortable, or unwelcome. Jason leaned over her shoulder. "Nice," he said. "No thanks, Mom." No smile. Nothing warm. Another small discovery. Another quiet cut. Still, I forced myself to continue. This was Christmas. I wanted to believe we could get through it. Then the moment came. Jason leaned back, stretching his arms, and said, almost casually, "So, Mom, like we said last night, no gifts for you this year." Emily and I agreed. "It's part of the boundaries thing." He said it lightly, almost jokingly, but cruelty doesn't need volume to be sharp. Emily didn't look up from her phone, but she smirked. Jason added, "Don't take it personally." Don't take it personally. Like that was possible. I took a slow breath. I had a choice. Let the humiliation swallow me or keep going. I kept going. "Well, I said quietly, "That's perfectly fine." Emily finally looked up. "Good," she said, crossing her legs again. "We thought it would help you reflect a little, like we said." There was that word again. Reflect. As if my love were a flaw. As if my existence required correction. Jason nodded. "Yeah, it's not a punishment. Just guidance." Guidance. From my own son. As if he were the parent and I the child. The sting of it was almost physical. But what hurt more, what cut deepest, was what I noticed next. Jason looked relieved. Relieved that I didn't argue. Relieved that I didn't question. Relieved that I accepted their lesson. That was the hardest discovery of all. My son was comfortable seeing me diminished. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding, not from anger, but from devastation. "Well then," I said, forcing a smile, "I suppose it's time for my gift to you too." Emily blinked. "There's more." Jason looked surprised. "Mom, you didn't have to." "Yes," I said softly. "I did." I reached into the drawer under the TV stand and pulled out an envelope. White. Simple. Harmless looking. Jason frowned. "What's this?" "A gift," I said. "And after the lesson you taught me, this one feels even more appropriate." Emily straightened, her phone forgotten for the first time all morning. Jason took the envelope slowly, looking confused. But before he opened it, he hesitated, just for a second, searching my face. That hesitation was the first time all morning I saw something real flicker in him. Doubt, uncertainty, fear, a tiny crack in his confidence. And that was when I realized something chilling. They expected me to be broken. They expected me to shrink. They expected me to accept humiliation and stay quiet. They had no idea what was coming. But the next discovery, the one that collapsed everything inside me, came before the envelope even opened. As Jason held it, Emily leaned toward him, her voice sharp and whisper thin. "Just remember what we talked about. Don't let her guilt you into anything." My breath stopped. "What we talked about. Don't let her guilt you. Anything." Jason nodded, quickly, automatically, like someone trained. I felt the room shift, tilt, darken, because in that moment, I finally understood. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't emotional. This wasn't a misunderstanding. They had planned this, discussed it, prepared a script. They didn't come to celebrate Christmas. They came to put me back in my place. And the envelope I had just handed them was about to turn that plan upside down. Jason didn't know it yet. Emily didn't know it yet. But I did. And though I hadn't planned it as revenge, though I had created it out of love months before, that envelope was about to become the most powerful thing I had ever given my son. The calm before the storm settled over the room. Jason slid his finger under the flap. And I realized, fully, painfully, that the mother I had been before this moment, the mother who excused everything, rationalized everything, forgave everything, was gone. Whatever happened when he opened that envelope would change all of us. Forever. I didn't sleep the night after Christmas. Not even for a minute. I thought exhaustion would finally wash over me, but instead I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying my son Ethan's smirk again and again. That one moment, that small, sharp look of satisfaction, felt like it carved something out of me. And the worst part wasn't even the words he said. It was the ease with which he said them, like hurting me had become natural to him. I kept hearing it. "No gifts for you, Mom. You need to learn a lesson." A lesson. My own son thought he was teaching me a lesson. For months I had been asking myself what I did wrong as a parent, how I raised a boy who could turn so cold. But that night, for the first time, I asked a different question. A harder one. One I had avoided because it felt like betrayal. Who has been influencing him? Who taught him that punishing me was acceptable or deserved? That question sat heavy on my chest, and every time I blinked, my brain showed me another subtle memory I had ignored. His girlfriend Trinity whispering something to him as she walked past me. Ethan rolling his eyes every time I reminded him to do something small around the house. His sudden belief that I was always overreacting, a phrase suspiciously similar to something I'd heard Trinity say when she thought I wasn't listening. I had been so focused on trying to fix things lovingly that I hadn't stopped to consider the quiet erosion happening beneath my feet. But now the silence of the house was loud enough to finally force the truth forward. I got out of bed just before dawn. I didn't turn on any lights. The cold air felt grounding as I walked through the house, touching the backs of chairs, the edges of picture frames, the curve of the Christmas tree still standing in the corner. Everything looked the same, except me. Somewhere inside, something had shifted. Not out of revenge. Not yet. It was something smaller but far more powerful. Clarity. For months, maybe even years, I had been reacting, over-explaining, apologizing for things I didn't do, trying to fix tension I didn't create. But as I stood there in my dim living room with the faint pine smell lingering in the air, I realized something painfully simple. If I kept trying to save a relationship that was hurting me, I would eventually lose myself. And I wasn't willing to let Ethan, or anyone else, take that from me. Something needed to change, and it needed to change quietly. No shouting, no emotional pleas, no more giving people weapons they could twist into proof I was too dramatic. I needed a plan. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened a notebook I hadn't touched in over a year. A gift Ethan had given me once, back when he still gave gifts. The pages were clean, untouched, a little stiff at the spine. It felt fitting. I started writing. Not a letter to him, not a speech, not the emotional monologue I had rehearsed in my head all night. Instead, I wrote 3 questions. What boundaries have been crossed? What am I no longer willing to tolerate? What consequences make sense, not out of punishment, but out of self-respect? My handwriting shook at first, but after a few lines, it steadied. I wrote about the disrespect, the dismissive comments, the emotional distance that had turned into emotional hostility, the way Trinity had inserted herself into decisions that didn't concern her, the slow draining of warmth in a home that used to be full of it. And then I wrote the sentence that would anchor everything that came next. Love without respect becomes harm. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was simply true. When I looked at the words, something inside me settled, like a puzzle piece sliding finally into the place it always belonged. I kept writing. I wrote that Ethan needed space to understand consequences. I wrote that I needed space to stop being hurt. I wrote that allowing him to treat me badly wasn't kindness, it was enabling. And I wrote a plan. A quiet, carefully measured one. Not revenge. Not yet. Just a shift. A reclaiming. By the time the sun rose, turning the edges of the curtains gold, I had 6 pages of notes. And a strange, steady calm had wrapped itself around me. I wasn't going to confront Ethan in anger. Anger would only feed the narrative he and Trinity seemed to enjoy, the one where I was oversensitive, too emotional, controlling. No, I was going to change things silently. I would remove myself from the role he had been taking advantage of. No more doing his laundry. No more cooking meals he didn't appreciate. No more financially supporting decisions he made irresponsibly. No more bending over backwards to avoid conflict. I would become neutral, steady, unshakable, and that shift alone would reveal more truth than any argument ever could. Because when people lose the convenience of your care, they reveal their real attitude towards you. Some grow, some crumble, some lash out. I would let Ethan show which one he was. But the plan wasn't just about boundaries. There was also the matter of information. If Trinity had been influencing him, or she had simply found ways to isolate him emotionally, I needed to understand how deep that influence ran. I wasn't looking to catch them in anything dramatic. This wasn't about spying or snooping. It was about observation, listening, watching, paying attention to the things I had ignored because I believed love meant trusting blindly. But trust without awareness becomes self-destruction. So I made a promise to myself. I would stop assuming the best. I would start seeing what was actually there, and the truth would guide my next steps. Around 9 a.m., I heard Ethan's door open upstairs. His footsteps were slow, heavy, the sound of someone who stayed up late, probably playing games or scrolling with Trinity on FaceTime. My stomach tightened, but this time it didn't twist. It braced. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, sipping my now cold coffee. The notebook sat open beside me, though I gently flipped it closed as I heard him approaching. When he entered the kitchen, he didn't say good morning. He didn't even look at me. He just walked to the fridge, grabbed the orange juice, and drank straight from the bottle, something he knew bothered me. Before, I might have corrected him, or sighed, or made a small comment to keep the peace. But peace wasn't mine to maintain alone anymore. I simply watched, quietly, with a kind of detached curiosity. He eventually glanced at me, probably expecting tension or a complaint. Instead, I simply said, good morning. Calm, level, unbothered. He blinked, thrown off for a moment. Morning, he muttered. A pause filled the space, the kind that used to feel suffocating but now felt informative. He waited for something. A question, an apology, a continuation of yesterday's pain. I gave him nothing. That was the first moment of the new shift. Small, subtle, but unmistakable. And he felt it. I could see it in the way he stayed a second longer than usual. A flicker of confusion, maybe even discomfort. Good. Confusion was the first crack in whatever dynamic he believed was unshakable. After he left the room, I exhaled slowly. This would take patience, consistency, strength I hadn't used in a long time. But I wasn't weak just because I loved him. Love and weakness were not the same thing. And for the first time in months, I felt a quiet, steady assurance. I wasn't losing my son. I was finally stopping the version of him that hurt us both. I collected my notebook, tucked it into a drawer, and began the rest of my day with a calm sense of purpose. Not because everything was fixed. Nothing was fixed yet. But because control, real, grounded control, had returned to me. And once a mother regains clarity, everything around her begins to shift, especially truth. I could feel it coming. Something big. Something revealing. Something that would take this entire situation and flip it on its head. And I was ready for it. For the first time since everything began. I was truly ready. I knew the shift had begun the moment I stopped reacting. But I didn't know how quickly the truth would surface, or how violently it would land. It happened the next afternoon. Ethan had been distant all morning, pacing the house, muttering under his breath, texting someone rapidly. His energy was jittery, uneasy, and Trinity, she wasn't even trying to hide her attitude anymore. Every sigh, every eye roll, every exaggerated glance toward Ethan was a message. Control her. Don't let her push back. Except I wasn't pushing back. Not anymore. I was simply still, calm, detached, and that made them both nervous. Good, because the moment of truth was already walking toward them, even if they didn't see it. It started with a knock on the front door. A sharp, official-sounding knock. Not friendly, not casual, authoritative. Ethan froze. Trinity looked up sharply. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the door. 2 envelopes were on the porch. Thick ones, both addressed to me, but clipped together with a note from the law office downtown. My breath caught. Not in fear, but in certainty. This was it. The final piece. The thing I had been waiting for, without even knowing it. I carried the envelopes back inside. Set them on the table. Didn't open them. I didn't need to. I already knew what they were. Because months earlier, long before Ethan's cruelty became undeniable, I had quietly met with a lawyer. Not to punish him. Not to cut him off. Not to threaten anything. Just to prepare. Just to ensure my affairs were in order. Just to protect myself. And, ironically, him. Back then, I never imagined he would need protecting from himself. But standing there now, watching him stare at the envelopes like they were grenades, I realized something. He already suspected what they meant, and that terrified him. Good. Let the truth terrify him the way his cruelty terrified me. Mom, what are those? Ethan asked. His voice cracked on the last word. Trinity stepped forward. Why are there legal envelopes? What did you do? What did I do? That was all it took. That one accusatory tone from a young woman who had never worked a day to support Ethan, never sacrificed sleep, money, or health for him, and yet somehow believed she had authority over me. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned, walked to the drawer beneath the TV stand, and pulled out the small white envelope, the one I had originally planned to give them as a Christmas surprise. My gift, I said quietly. Ethan's eyes widened. His breathing quickened. He remembered. The envelope he hadn't opened. The one he had tossed aside last night after telling me I didn't deserve a gift from them. I held it out. Go on. Open it. He looked at Trinity. She nodded sharply. Ethan opened the envelope with trembling fingers. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. His eyes scanned it. Once. Then again. His face drained of color. What? What is this? He whispered. Trinity grabbed the paper from his hands. She read 3 lines before her jaw dropped. Oh my God, she breathed. No, this isn't right. You wouldn't. But I did. I had. Quietly, calmly, months ago. The document was simple. Transfer of property. My entire home, the house Ethan grew up in, officially placed in my name alone, with full rights to sell, rent, or bequeath without any legal obligation to him. No automatic inheritance. No assumptions. No entitlements. It wasn't a punishment. It was protection. Protection from exactly the behavior they were showing now. It's not fair, Trinity snapped. You can't just erase Ethan from the house he grew up in. I met her eyes. I didn't erase him. My voice was steady, sharp, precise. I simply made sure that no one could pressure me, or use me, or teach me lessons in my own home. Ethan swallowed hard. His hands began to shake, violently now. He tried to hide it, but he couldn't. His voice broke. Mom, why would you do this? I stepped closer, not angry, not emotional, just honest. Because love without respect becomes harm. And yesterday, you chose harm. He flinched. Trinity stepped in front of him like a shield. You're overreacting. This is exactly why we needed boundaries. Boundaries? I interrupted softly. You humiliated me. In my own living room. On Christmas. After everything I've done for you. That isn't a boundary. That's cruelty. Trinity's mouth snapped shut. Good. Because there was more. I reached into the second envelope, the one from the lawyer. I slid a paper across the table. Ethan stayed at it, confused, then horrified. It was my updated will. Clean, clear, final. He was not disowned. But his inheritance was now conditional. Explicitly conditional. Respect. Communication. No financial entitlement. No third-party influence. One violation, and his portion legally shifted to charity. He read the clause 3 times. His hands shook harder. Mom, please. His voice was barely a whisper. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I said. I did. Silence fell like snow. Soft, but suffocating. Ethan sank into a chair, holding his head in his hands. Trinity hovered behind him, pale and trembling with anger. This isn't fair, she hissed. We were just trying to teach me a lesson. I finished. Tell me I didn't deserve a gift? Make me feel small so you could feel big. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, but nothing came out. Because the truth was sitting between us on the table, black ink on white paper, undeniable. Ethan looked up at me, eyes wet. I didn't know, he whispered. Mom, I didn't know it would hurt you like that. I thought it was just a joke. Something Trinity said we should do to set boundaries. So you'd, I don't know, stop being so involved. I nodded. Slowly. Ethan, if you had simply talked to me, I would have listened. You are my son. I love you. But you didn't talk. You punished. You embarrassed. You let someone else decide how you should treat me. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time, it sounded real. But this wasn't the moment for forgiveness. Not yet. Not here. Sorry doesn't undo cruelty, I said gently. He dropped his gaze. Trinity finally spoke, voice shaking with fury. You're manipulating him, making yourself the victim. This is emotional blackmail. I turned fully toward her. Blackmail has demands, I said. I have none. I'm simply protecting myself. She went silent. Ethan whispered, Mom, I didn't mean for things to go this far. I stepped closer, placed the documents back in their envelopes, and spoke quietly, the way truth deserves to be delivered. Ethan, this house, this life, this love, none of it was ever owed to you. It was given, freely, with joy. But gifts come with responsibility, not entitlement. He covered his face with his hands again. His shoulders shook. Trinity looked at him, really looked, and realized she was losing control. Of him, of the situation, of the story she'd built between them. She reached for his arm. Ethan, we're leaving. Now. No, he said quietly, pulling away. And that single motion was the real climax. Not the documents, not the shaking hands, not the truth finally laid bare. It was Ethan choosing, for the first time in months, to think for himself. Trinity stepped back as if slapped. Ethan turned toward me, eyes red. Mom, please, give me a chance to fix this. I nodded once. A chance, Ethan, not a guarantee. His breath hitched, but he nodded too. And that was how the storm broke. Not with screaming, not with violence, but with truth and consequence, and the son finally seeing the damage he had done. After the storm settled, the house became painfully quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, like the soft hush after a snowfall. No, this was a heavy quiet, the kind that follows an earthquake, where everything looks the same but nothing is the same. Ethan sat at the kitchen table long after Trinity walked out. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She didn't even look back. She just gathered her coat, lifted her chin, and left as if she was stepping away from a sinking ship she didn't want to be caught on. But even after she was gone, her presence hung in the house like dust that wouldn't settle. Ethan stared at the documents, my will, my property transfer papers, as if they were instructions written in another language. His hand still trembled a little, though he tried to hide it by curling them into loose fists. I watched him from across the kitchen, not with anger, not with bitterness, just tiredness, a kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from years of giving, years of hoping, years of being hurt without saying a word. Mothers know that kind of tired. It creeps in slowly, settles in the heart, and eventually becomes the background ache you carry everywhere. I sat down across from him. The chair squeaked softly. The clock ticked on the wall. Somewhere in the living room, a loose pine needle dropped from the Christmas tree. And for a while, neither of us spoke. He was the one who broke the silence. Mom, he whispered, I messed everything up. He said it like someone admitting a crime. Quiet, small, like the truth itself weighed too much to hold. I folded my hands in my lap. Ethan, I don't want to hurt you, but I also can't pretend everything is fine. I know, he said quickly. His voice cracked. I know, Mom. And I swear, I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. I thought we were just setting boundaries. I exhaled slowly. That word again. Boundaries. Boundaries are healthy, I said softly. Punishment isn't. He winced. I didn't want to punish you, he whispered. But you did. I kept my tone gentle, even as the truth stung. You humiliated me. You and Trinity planned it ahead of time. He dropped his gaze, forehead resting against his folded hands. I don't know why I let her talk me into it, he said. She kept saying you were too involved, too emotional, too controlling. A faint, sad smile tugged at my mouth. Do you believe that? He didn't answer, not at first. Then he lifted his head, eyes red and puffy, and shook it. No, I don't. But she's so confident when she talks. She makes everything sound reasonable. And I just went along with her because it was easier than arguing. It always was. Ah, there it was. The missing piece. The part one had suspected but never fully allowed myself to acknowledge. Did she tell you not to let me come to the hospital when Lily was born? I asked quietly. He nodded. Did she tell you to limit my visits? Another nod. Did she tell you that you needed to set rules with me? A third nod. Did she tell you to embarrass me on Christmas? This time he didn't nod. He whispered, yes. A small ache opened in my chest, not sharp, not dramatic. Just a dull, tired ache, like pressing on a bruise that has finally surfaced after weeks of hiding under the skin. I inhaled slowly. Ethan, I said gently, you have your own mind, your own voice, your own heart. No one can take that from you unless you hand it over. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I know, and I did. I handed everything over. We sat in silence again, the kind of silence that feels like mourning. Not mourning a person, but mourning the relationship we once had. My little boy was still there somewhere, but he had been buried under someone else's expectations for so long that he forgot how to stand on his own. Finally, he took a shaky breath. Mom, is there any way to fix this? I looked at him carefully, not as a mother blinded by love, not as a woman crushed by betrayal. Just, honestly, yes, I said, but it will take time, and effort, and accountability. He nodded quickly. I'll do whatever you want. I held up a hand. No, Ethan, this isn't about doing what I want. This is about you figuring out who you are when no one else is whispering in your ear. I want you to grow, not obey. His eyes glistened again. Mom, he whispered, I'm so sorry. And this time, I believed him, not because the words were perfect, not because he cried, not because he finally admitted the truth, but because for the first time in months, maybe even years, he wasn't repeating someone else's opinion. He was speaking from himself. That afternoon moved slowly. We didn't talk much more. We didn't pretend everything was better. We just existed together in the same space without tension slicing the air. Ethan helped me take down some decorations. He washed a few dishes without being asked. He kept checking on Lily upstairs. He even fixed the loose hinge on the cabinet door that had been bothering me for weeks. Small things, gentle things. You learn a lot from small things. Around 5 o'clock, he came into the living room and stood awkwardly near the tree. Mum, he said, do you want me to stay a few more days? I can take time off work. I shook my head gently. No, honey, you need to go home and think. Really think. Alone. Not with someone telling you what conclusions to reach. He swallowed hard. I don't know if Trinity will still be there. She might not, I said softly, and that will hurt. I know it will. He nodded, tears filling his eyes. But, I added, you deserve a relationship where your voice matters, where your boundaries matter, where your family isn't a threat to someone. His shoulders slumped. The truth hit him like a wave. He sat beside me on the couch, like he used to when he was a boy after a bad day at school. Mom, he whispered, I don't want to lose you. I placed my hand over his. Warm, steady, reassuring. You won't, I said. But you might lose the version of me who lets herself be mistreated. And that's a good thing. For both of us. He breathed out a trembling laugh. I think I need that version of you. The strong one. You've always had her, I said. You just stopped seeing her. A long silence followed. A calm one this time. The kind where healing begins quietly, like a seed pushing gently through soil. When he packed later that evening, he moved slowly, deliberately, as if each item required thought. Trinity's toothbrush was still in the bathroom, but he left it. Her sweater on the chair, he folded it, but left it too. Her perfume on the dresser, he didn't touch it. Little signs, quiet ones. I didn't comment. Healing belongs to the person walking through it, not the person watching. Before he left, he hugged me. Not a quick, distracted hug. Not a polite one. A real hug. Strong, lingering, familiar. He whispered into my shoulder, I'm sorry. For everything. I kissed his cheek. I know. Go home. Breathe. Figure out who you want to be. He nodded, pulled away, then paused. "Mom," he said softly, can we talk tomorrow? Even just for a few minutes." My chest warmed. "Yes," I said. "We can talk tomorrow." He smiled, small, shaky, real, and then he left. The door closed behind him, gently. A strange mix of sadness and peace settled over the house. The kind of peace that doesn't erase the pain, but promises it won't last forever. That night, the house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't a quiet that suffocated me. It was a quiet that let me breathe. I sat in the living room with a cup of tea, watching the lights on the Christmas tree flicker softly. Not everything was healed. Not everything was fixed. Not everything was forgiven. But something important had shifted. For years, I believed being a good mother meant giving everything. Time, money, energy, forgiveness. But now I understood something deeper. Being a good mother also means protecting yourself, so your child can learn to respect you. I closed my eyes. Let the warmth of the tea settle inside me. Let the silence wrap gently around my shoulders. Tomorrow would come, and with it, conversations, decisions, possibilities. But tonight, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Calm, quiet, enough. And sometimes, enough is the beginning of everything getting better. In the days that followed, the house slowly returned to its ordinary quiet. The Christmas lights dimmed, the leftover cookies went stale, the pine needles began to fall one by one. I moved through the rooms not with sadness this time, but with a strange, soft gratitude. Life wasn't perfect. My heart still hurt. The wound was still fresh. But the pain no longer felt like something happening to me. It felt like something I was finally moving through. Ethan called every day that week. Not long calls, not emotional confessions, just honest check-ins. "How are you, Mom? Did you eat today? Can we talk tonight after Lily goes to sleep?" Simple questions, small gestures, but each one felt like a stitch pulling the torn edges of our relationship back together, little by little. He didn't mention Trinity much, and I didn't ask. Healing isn't interrogation. Healing is space. Healing is allowing someone to reach towards you at their own pace, with their own steps. One evening, after a long silence on the phone, Ethan exhaled and said quietly, "I don't know who I am without someone telling me how I should feel." I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't know what to say, but because that kind of truth deserves a moment before being met. When I finally spoke, my voice was soft. "Then this is your chance to find out." He breathed a shaky laugh. "Mom, how are you so calm about all of this?" I smiled to myself. I'm not calm because it didn't hurt. I'm calm because I finally understood my part in the hurt. "What part?" he asked carefully. "I taught you that I would always bend," I said. "That I would always absorb the blow. That you could give me the leftover pieces of your time, your attention, your respect, and I'd still be grateful for them." He was very quiet. "But love," I continued, "isn't bending until you break. Real love requires two people standing upright, choosing kindness without being asked." When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "I want to learn how to do that." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. As for me, I learned something too. Something I should have learned years ago, but sometimes the hardest truths arrive only after the deepest hurt. I learned that protecting your heart doesn't mean building walls. It means building doors, doors with locks, doors you open intentionally, doors that let in the people who treat your home, your life, and your heart with respect. It means saying, "I love you, but I love myself too." It means understanding that boundaries aren't punishments, they are invitations for healthier connections. It means realizing that motherhood doesn't end when your child becomes an adult, but it does change. And sometimes the change is necessary. Sometimes love needs structure. Sometimes generosity needs limits. Sometimes silence needs to be replaced with truth. And sometimes the moment someone's hands begin to shake is actually the moment their heart begins to wake. The house is quiet again now, but it's a different quiet. Not lonely, not wounded, a peaceful quiet, a chosen quiet. I sit in my rocking chair most evenings, sipping tea, watching the last remaining Christmas lights glow softly in the window, and I think about how life doesn't always give us the endings we want, but it often gives us the endings we need. Ethan and I aren't perfect now. We still have conversations to have. We still have trust to rebuild. We still have shadows we haven't touched yet. But his trying, his reaching, his showing up with honesty instead of excuses. And for now, that's enough. Enough to hope. Enough to heal. Enough to breathe again without feeling the weight of his choices pressing against my heart. I don't know what will happen with Trinity. Maybe they'll reconcile. Maybe they won't. But whatever happens, I know that I will not lose myself again. Not to keep the peace. Not to avoid confrontation. Not to soften someone else's sharpness. My heart has value. My time has value. My love has value. And anyone who wants a place in my life must treat those things with care. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. You are allowed to set boundaries with the people you love. You are allowed to protect yourself from those who hurt you, even unintentionally. And you are allowed to grow, even if others don't grow with you. Love is not measured by how much you tolerate. Love is measured by how much you honor yourself while caring for others. And the strongest mothers, the strongest people, are the ones who choose truth over silence, healing over habit, and dignity over fear. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but some truths deserve to be said aloud, so they stop echoing in the dark. Now for the outro, just as you requested. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. And with that, I'll leave you with one final thought. Healing doesn't always come from fixing others. Sometimes it comes from finally choosing yourself.